and a warm welcome to all of you to day two of the Bangalore Business Lit Fest. It's an honor and delight to be anchoring the sessions this evening. I've attended, BBLF more than once when it was held in person, and I do hope to capture the deep focus and the warmth of this event in the online avatar. So, quickly moving on to our first session of the evening. Let me ask you, what were you doing when you were 7 years old? I'm guessing the most critical things on our mind were about the dinner menu at home or grabbing a little extra time to play downstairs with friends. But as Rupangi's latest book highlights, the world is changing. Today, think founder, innovator, game changer, and the faces are getting younger and younger. As young as 7 year old, can you believe it? And Rupangi has captured so many such stories. So I'm happy to introduce Rupangi Sharma, author, editor, and edupreneur. She is the founder and CEO of EFG Learning, a Mumbai based education consultancy. EFG, Education for Growth, has been her mantra, and she's been laser focused on using the power of technology and innovation to transform learning and teaching. She's worked with the MIT Media Lab in Boston, the Central Institute of Education Technology, and many leading educational institutions in India and abroad, and recently headed content and pedagogy at a nonprofit edtech for low income schools. Rupangi has authored nonfiction stories, including one as part of the Chicken Soup series, a collection of poems titled A Loving Embrace, and a novel on gender biased sex selection. And now, her latest release, Young Indian Innovators, Entrepreneurs, and Changemakers, profiles 65 young Indians aged 7 to 21. These youngsters are effecting impactful change from far flung rural areas, small towns, and urban cities, a genuine promise of an exciting future for India. Over to you, Rupangi.
Thanks so much, Subha. And while Namita needs no introductions, I'd like to quickly tell our viewers about the many hats that you wear, Namita. Namita is the executive director of Emcure Pharmaceuticals, a global pharmaceutical company headquartered in Pune with a turnover of $750 million. She is an MBA graduate from the Fuqua School of Business and a chartered accountant from ICAI. She is a recipient of various prestigious corporate awards such as the 40 Under 40 Award by ET and Top 50 Most Powerful Women in Business by Business Today. Outside of work, Namita is passionate about improving women's health in India and promoting entrepreneurship. She's also launched a unique YouTube talk show on women's health called Uncondition Yourself with Namita. She leads Thapar Entrepreneurs Academy that teaches entrepreneurship and is part of the global television show Shark Tank India, and most of you know her as the inimitable shark from the show. So we'll start, Namita, with 10 rapid fire questions, which you'd need to answer within a few seconds. And then I'll give you a minute each for a brief set of questions related to the themes in your book, after which we'll take the Q&A from our audience. So let's start with the rapid fire round. One word to describe yourself would be?
Driven.
Okay. How would you define your style of investing as a shark?
Authentic.
A defining moment of your life that you'd like to share very quickly.
I think when I became a chartered accountant at 21, a lot of things changed for me in terms of just me loving myself more and then just getting into a different orbit in my life.
That's interesting. What makes you most grateful to have the parents that you do?
That they love me unconditionally in spite of my drama and tantrums, even at this age.
Oh, that's great. A moment when you were at a crossroads as an entrepreneur but managed to make the right decision.
We were doing it's a tough one. We were doing some restructuring at Emcure, and cost cutting is never easy. And it's this emotions versus rational and what's good for the company. And I was definitely at crossroads, but I went with the company first approach, which is always something that my father's taught me. And at the cost of it emotionally being very taxing, it is something I did, and I'm happy I did, because company always comes first. Did I lose you, Rupangi?
Right. Okay. For a moment there, but I think I'm back. All right.
Okay.
So, what is Emcure's biggest contribution to the healthcare space, according to you?
I think anemia. More than 50% of Indian women are anemic and they
Hmm.
don't even know about it. So I think both in
Hmm.
terms of awareness,
Right.
diagnosis, innovative molecules for treatment, that's
Hmm.
what it would be.
Hmm. What was the most memorable moment during Shark Tank for you? I'm sure a lot of viewers are wondering about this as well.
Oh man, the most memorable moment was, a couple of deals where again I was torn between it may not be the best investment, but it's a good message to
Hmm.
give to the public, like Jugadu Kamlesh, Pandurang Tavre.
Hmm.
And I think those moments I was really torn in terms of do I wear an investor hat or as a business leader who's supposed to give a message to the
Hmm.
country hat. And those moments, I think, changed me as a person too.
I can imagine. What is your pet peeve as an investor?
My pet peeve is, they accept a certain valuation on the tank. And then when we go out to do due diligence, they
Yeah.
suddenly want 3x more after the episode has aired, which obviously in a span of a month, we're not
Hmm.
going to give them 3x of what we committed on television. And that's
Right.
typically called seller's remorse, which is very common in the US Shark Tank as well. So that's my pet peeve. We've had a few of those.
Super. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But my next question is, why did you choose the title The Dolphin and the Shark?
That's very close to my
I
heart
think the
because I think,
shark is self explanatory. Yeah.
yeah, I think today's leader, I mean, I've got, I don't know, 23 years experience in the corporate world now. And I think today's leader
Right.
needs to balance empathy and aggression. So for me, a dolphin stands
Hmm.
for empathy, a shark stands for aggression. And I think you can't be one or the other. The day you learn to balance both, not just
Right.
as a leader, but in your personal life as well, I think that's very critical.
Super. What are the top three skills that entrepreneurs must have?
And I've written that in my book. There's a chapter on it called the three C's. And it's basically
The three
courage,
C's, right?
competence, and compassion.
Great. And my last one for the rapid fire question is a bit heavy. Your take on whether the funding winter is expected to continue, and will India overtake China and VC investments despite it?
So the investment winter will continue for a bit because I think there were some very optimistic valuations, and
Hmm.
cash burn was getting a priority over cash flow, which is not the right
Right.
way to look at companies and their valuation.
Hmm.
Yes, you have to make losses for a bit, but then you have to establish a path to profitability, which a lot of startups were not doing and still getting away with very heavy valuations. So the correction is going to take some time. And so I think the investment winter is here for a little bit, but it's good for the country because it'll get people more focused on the fundamentals rather than just aspiring for that fancy word unicorn.
That's so true. So, really quickly, your book addresses personal insights, which are peppered with anecdotes from your journey as an investor on Shark Tank, and also, of course, an entrepreneur who manages a venture currently valued at $750 million, like I mentioned. So, to give our readers a sneak peek of your book, which I'm just going to quickly hold up, the dolphin and the shark. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions that tackle the themes your book addresses so very comprehensively. I went through the book and really enjoyed it. Thank you for writing it. I think it's a great book for aspiring entrepreneurs to pick up and read and really delve into your personal journey as well as your learnings, challenges, learnings, and everything that has taken you so far to where you are today. All right. So the first question takes you back to your childhood, and I read a little bit about it, of course, but without giving away anything. What are some important childhood experiences that shaped you and made you who you are?
I think in the book I've written about three specific memories. The first one being how there was so much emphasis on a mark sheet. And that led to low self esteem as a child because I felt a mark sheet is what
Right.
defined me. And the sad thing
Hmm.
is that I still see that continuing today in our country. And so it's a strong message to the youngsters out there that a mark sheet does not define you. You're so much more than a mark sheet. And so I think sharing some of these personal stories gives strength to others who are going through the same thing. Unfortunately, 20, 25 years later. The second set of memories was my mother. She played a very pivotal role because she got married really young, had kids really young, and did not get a chance to pursue her career aspirations. And so the role of a mother in just putting that drive in her daughter and ensuring that she's financially independent, I think that's relevant even today. And I think more and more women need to get back in the workforce because our workforce participation is under 20%, which is really a terrible number. So I think that is an important memory of my mom telling me a lot of bedtime stories to instill that drive. And then the third one is my father. He was a first generation entrepreneur, really struggled a lot to build Emcure. And seeing him go through struggles and never losing his smile, I think made me an eternal optimist. So these are, the three memories that really stand out, and I believe shaped me to become more driven and also kinder.
Lovely. And I actually, what stayed with me was how your mom peppered your walls with
Yeah.
pictures of career-driven women. I think that's a visual which has
And it's
stayed with
funny,
me.
Rupangi,
So
but even today, I know exactly what outfit, what color, what accessories, what heels, what the briefcase looked like. I mean, somehow those childhood memories just, they imprinted on your brain. So till today, I remember everything in those pictures that she put on my walls. And I think that's why parents have a very important role they're the first
right,
role models in every child's life.
very true. Um, you went viral for saying out, Namit. I'm out, Namita. So, that's something I wanted to sort of bring to. And I know that everybody here who's watching today remembers that moment in Shark Tank when you said, I'm out, right? And so tell us a little bit about the 4 F's of your funding framework, which give you that kind of clarity.
You missed the sentence before I'm out. ये मेरी expertise नहीं है. So, even I
Right.
didn't realize I said it so often because we finished shooting by December 12th and they aired
Mhm.
the show on December 20th. So it wasn't parallel shooting like other reality shows. And so there was
Yeah.
no time for any course correction or looking back and adjusting our styles. But in hindsight, I wouldn't change a thing because I'm selective as an investor. And that's where the I'm out comes from. I think it's important to invest in things where you can add value. It's important to say no if the founder can find another investor who can add more value. So I think it's a win-win.
Right.
For me, I want to be part of journeys where I can add value. For the founder,
Mhm.
they need to find an investor who can help them the best. So I was very
Right.
selective in the companies I chose to invest in. And so I
Mhm.
stand by my meme that's gone viral. No regret. In fact,
So it's something that you're
that's
proud of.
something I still repeat in any talks, any write-ups. I start with
Right.
that, and it always cracks up the audience.
I can imagine that. And so my next question is, what is Emcure's escalator pitch, and what are the ingredients for a perfect pitch?
So I think Emcure's tagline is success through innovation. And if you really see why we are in the top 10 in the country in India, it's because we have brought first to market and many
Mhm.
innovative molecules and made it affordable for the Indian masses. And I think the
Hmm.
second elevator pitch that I would talk about MQ is we're very diversified. So when I joined the company
Yeah.
15 years back, 95% of our sales came from India. Today, only
Mhm.
45% of our sales comes from India. So we are in 70 plus
Right.
countries.
Truly
My co-stars
global,
always make fun
right?
of me. They say, "आप तो 70 plus countries में हो, बोलो बोलो." So we all rag each other. But that's something
Right.
we are very proud of. That we're truly an Indian company that's made a global mark. So I think these two would be my elevator pitches. That we brought a lot of innovation to India, and secondly, we're truly a global company with presence in 70 plus countries, which is a matter of pride.
Super. You briefly spoke about seller's remorse post investment a little earlier on in our conversation. Tell us a little bit about what this means and how the real work begins after the paperwork starts, and how do investors contribute?
Yeah, so the due diligence is a whole different animal because you have to realize that a lot of these founders are very low revenue, just started off, so they don't have any of their
Hmm.
paperwork in place.
Hmm.
So in due
Right.
diligence, when we're looking at their financials, their regulatory, legal, secretarial paperwork, they have nothing. A lot of them have nothing in place. So something that should be
Right.
taking a month and a half sometimes goes on for 5 months because we're just waiting for them for simple things like converting a partnership to a private limited company. Things like that really delay the due diligence process. And I think where an investor can help is very different. So, different investors at Shark Tank bring different value to the investors. But one thing that we all have in
Right.
common is we all build big brands and we all have
Mm-hmm.
business acumen. And at the end of the day, an investor is looking for two things. One is a little strategic inputs in terms of business acumen, and two is helping them with
Mm-hmm.
fundraise and scaling. And all of us have done that
Right.
in our companies. So that
Hmm.
those are the two strengths: business acumen and fundraising and scaling, which all of us can
Mm-hmm.
help these very new pre-revenue or low revenue startups with.
Super. How do you go about building winning teams and ingrain that kind of a culture in the DNA of an organization?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite chapters because I've written a lot about Emcure and I've written a lot
Right.
about my father in this chapter. And I think that, a lot of times people ask me that what's the secret sauce that's made
Mm-hmm.
Emcure what it is. I mean, he's a first generation entrepreneur and 7,000 crore company. That's not a joke. So what is it that made it what it is?
Yeah.
And I always say it's a winning team. And a winning team
Right.
that breeds a winning culture takes a lot of work. Leaders today more and more, like 30 to 40% of their
Mm.
time has to go in leadership development, managing the talent pipeline, really coaching, identifying the future leaders, the succession plan. And we've done that really well at MCure. So, I always say my biggest leadership mantra is hire people smarter than you, because only people who are
Right.
smarter than you will challenge you, will dissent, and you
Mm.
can delegate and get that creativity and innovation that takes you to the next level. So we've spoken about hiring people smarter than us and what it takes to then retain them. Because it's one thing to
Mm.
hire them, but then how do you make sure they stick around? Whether it is giving them equity, making them CEOs of the subsidiaries, biotech
Mm.
companies with a long gestation period. How do you change
Mm.
the compensation structure to be
Right.
different than other typical companies which don't have the long gestation period? So I've given a lot of MQ examples in that chapter,
Mm.
and that was a fun part of building winning teams as a chapter. And I truly believe that's what separates mediocre companies from outstanding companies. It's the winning teams.
And that's how you've gone truly global, like you say, right? So, you spoke a little bit right now about dissent and how it's important in an organization. So, what were some moments of the Sharks' dissent with founders and amongst each other that unlock powerful insights?
Oh, we even dissent. We dissent all the time because when you put strong personalities on a floor together, people are going to have very strong opinions. So I remember there was a founder where people loved her product, but they didn't invest because they felt she would be very
Mm.
stubborn and not open to feedback. And they said, we don't
Yeah.
want to partner with such a person. And I, in
Mm.
fact, did not feel that at all. And I felt that she was very warm, very open, and that was a bit stereotypical. And so I invested.
Mm.
We had a
Yeah.
lot of such disconnects with names of the ventures. The same name some sharks would like, some sharks would not like.
Mm.
We
Yeah.
dissented on the market size and the potential. We
Mhm.
dissented on the fact whether they needed a co-founder or could go solo. I mean, there were so many areas that we dissented on, and it was very
Mhm.
interesting to see that because even on the role of a mentor, I remember we dissented on whether a mentor is. So we would have these philosophical conversations because when we would give a valuation, the founder would typically step out for 2 minutes to call a mentor. That should I take this
Mhm.
valuation? Should I not take it? And then there would be people on
Yeah.
the floor saying, "What is this mentor? Why can't they decide for themselves?" Right? And I'd be like,
Mm.
"No,
Mm.
mentors have played a very big role in my life. I get it that they have to get a
Mm.
they have to have a sounding board." And so we would always have these very philosophical discussions. on
Right.
mentors, on dissent, which made it more interesting, I think, not just for us, but also for the audience.
Absolutely. I think that's what kept us glued to television and watching the show each time the episodes came out. Okay, so I'm going to take some questions now from the audience as well. And
Sure.
we'll continue with the questions that I had on my mind too in between. Please share some of the unexpected surprises, good and bad, that you had during your investor journey. That's from Ramesh Kumar. Thanks so much, Ramesh, for that question.
So the unexpected surprises, the good ones were that there were companies I was lukewarm about, but then after due diligence, some of them turned out to be winners. And that's because
Yeah.
they were very organized, very driven, very methodical. So, for example, Rare Planet, when I invested in them, they were barely at 4 airport stores, the handicrafts
Hmm.
company. Now they're at 35
Right.
airports. The scale at which they've grown in just 6 months, I would never
Wow.
have expected that. And when you really read
Absolutely.
Rano's story, and I've covered a little bit about Rano's story in my book, that gives you insight into why he is so driven and why he went from 4 stores to 35 stores in 6 months. So those were some good surprises. The unexpected surprises were there were two or three of my investees, founders, where I was trying to help them, but they were a bit stubborn and not open to feedback at all. And so at that time, you just have to,
Right.
okay, you learn through your own
Take a call. Yeah.
experiences, and you step back because you never want to impose
Yeah.
as an investor. So at the
Right.
time, you barely get 40 minutes with a founder. So it's later when you
Hmm.
do the due diligence and become part of their journeys that you get the real look on what a founder is. And that has a direct
And all
impact
the
on
drama.
the drama.
And
That has
all
a
the
direct impact
drama
on how the
behind the
company
scenes,
runs
right?
as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, what is your experience of working in a family business spin? And actually, this ties in well with the question that Shilpa has asked. Thanks for your question, Shilpa. What's your family's reaction on the book? So that's an interesting question. So we'll take both if that's okay with you.
So family business is a double-edged sword. I mean, it's a blessing to have the ability to make an impact in a business which is a family business and it's your own baby. But then there are a lot of these
Hmm.
other nuances that I've written about in terms of challenges of a family business, and I've outlined that in detail in my book. I mean, one of the common threads in my book is it's not just all goody goody. I've written about a
Yeah.
lot of personal struggles and
You've
personal
written about it as sort of like a roller coaster ride,
yeah.
So it's your highs, it's your lows, it's everything in between. When you
And there are
plateau,
many lows. And there are
it's a
many
whole,
lows.
yeah, yeah,
Many lows
absolutely.
in my journey as a
Absolutely.
family
And
business.
I remember reading in the chapter also that you said that, as an entrepreneur, you have to be really thick skinned and you're
Yeah.
always going to have more failures than successes. So that's something I
Absolutely.
think that,
Always.
yeah.
You have to really have nerves of steel and you have to look at failures as learning and focus on the learning and the growth and not the hurt and the guilt. Unless you have that
Yeah.
positive mindset, you are not going to survive this journey. So, I'm proud of the fact that I've written a lot about personal failures and personal,
Yeah.
setbacks because I think very often people posture and just write the goody goody stuff and they're afraid to
Yeah.
show the vulnerabilities. And that's why the vulnerable leader, that chapter is one of my favorite chapters.
Right. And that ties in well with our next question. What's your leadership style and should leaders be vulnerable?
Absolutely, they should be vulnerable because it does three things. One is it gives others the courage to be vulnerable. It creates a culture of empathy, and when people know that they're not going to be judged and they can be authentic, it really creates a culture of creativity and innovation because people are not afraid to fail. They know they're not going to be punished for failing.
Yeah.
And I think that
Right.
authenticity, that empathy, that creativity is again what takes the company to the next level. And I think you cannot have that if you are posturing and faking it all the time. So I think
Yeah.
vulnerability
True.
more and more is an important trait.
All right. So there are two slightly technical questions from the audience. Gopal Krishnan PK, thanks for your question. How do you decide the valuation is right in early stage companies when usual methods like DCF, you may have to explain that to the rest of the audience, have no meaning?
So
And the
a lot
second,
of
I'm
people,
just going to, yeah.
yeah.
Or do you want to take the first and then I'll go on to the
I just
second?
finished the
Yeah.
first. So, the way we did
Yeah,
valuations,
sure.
a lot of companies were D2C companies. So, there were three ways we did
Mm-hmm.
valuation. One is a lot of them were D2C companies. So, D2C companies, thumb of rule, 3 to 5 times sales is what we did,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the gross margin. Then, second method is a lot of them had a prior round of investment. So, you never want to down
Mm-hmm.
value. So we would see
Yeah.
when the prior round of investment was, what month it was, and then, do a ballpark valuation. Third method was
Right.
competitors. We would know a lot of
Mm-hmm.
competitors who had got a certain valuation, and we would use that as a benchmark. So these were the
Hmm.
three very back of the envelope ways of doing valuation, because you're right. I mean, you can't use a DCA for a very complicated method of valuation when you have very little time to make a decision on the tank.
All right. And so the next question is, Namita, please guide on what role can a CA play in an NGO like Akshay Patra Foundation? We feed 2 million each school day across India through midday meal programs, something around internal audit. So really quickly, if you could answer that, I think we have 5 minutes left. So I'd like to take one or two, three more questions. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. In fact, this is a great question. So, congratulations for
Mm-hmm.
working in the social impact sector. And I think one of the things that a CA can bring to philanthropy, to social impact, is structure. Because unless you don't run an NGO like a company, you're not going to get the scale and the systems in place. So, I think a CA can add a lot of value in terms of processes, structure, governance that can take social impact sector to the next level. And my compliments on being part of Akshay Patra, that is doing such incredible work in the country.
Okay, so Dipto has asked us, did you hire external business consultants for building up the leadership pipeline and putting things like separate compensation for businesses with higher gestation time?
No, we rarely use external consultants. I think the best learning has been from our own sixth sense and intuition of what works and what doesn't work. Uh, and then we've pivoted, we've changed, we've tweaked. So we've actually done it on our own through our gut instinct and through the collective wisdom of the top leaders.
Right. Okay, and this is a question I'd like to ask you. Give us some examples of women who are breaking barriers from the Shark Tank episodes that left an impression on your mind.
Oh, many. And in fact, written a full list of them
You've given a
in
full
my
list,
chapter on
yeah.
women breaking barriers. There
Right.
were so many, so many, so many. The Jahaji pickle women who were rattling off MBA buzzwords, and they're from Darbhanga. I mean, they don't really have that MBA background, but they worked hard, they studied, they came so well prepared. Sanskriti, who's a CEO of the visually impaired device, with the little boy
Mm-hmm.
Prathamesh who stole my heart. Then you had so many other women who gave back. The Indian hemp company lady, who were like, did you ask me this because I'm a woman? Then the good piggy girl who got
Right.
shredded to pieces but kept a smile intact. I mean, they were just incredible women to watch, and you'll be surprised that 48% of the deals that got funded on Shark Tank either had a solo woman founder or a woman was part of the co-founding team. And I think those are
Right.
incredible numbers at Shark Tank. So I think we've really done a good job of showcasing women power.
Super. And Namita, with that last question, I'd like to say I'm out. Thanks again for joining us. I was
Thank you.
waiting
It
to
was
say that
very
throughout
enjoyable.
the
I love
session.
it. People say that to me all the time. Expertise Wali, I'm out Wali, and I love it. So great. Thank you
Right.
so much for
So
your
great. Thank you
time.
so
I
much for
really
joining
enjoy the
us. Yes.
conversation,
Thanks for your
Rupangi.
time. Super. Thanks, Subha.
Bye.
Thank, thank you
Bye
so
bye.
much, Rupangi, and
Thank
thank you,
you.
Namita. Wonderful rapid fire and a great set of questions, and of course, delightful answers. And really love the insight on how many women have got funded, because
Yes,
that's
that's
such a
a
challenge
fantastic
point.
number,
So
For
48%,
important.
It's a really fantastic
amazing,
number.
amazing. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much. Thanks, Rupangi. Brilliant questions, and I really had a great time.
Thanks, Amita. Thanks a ton. All right.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
Subha.
Bye.